Hi, we're going to talk about the toolbar. So we've got a number of different tools in our toolbar, and I'm going to go through each of them. Over here on our side, right here, we've got our color palette, which allows us to choose different colors and whatever one suits our need and edit them. See other video on this. We have our zoom, which allows us to zoom in and out on our marchers. And then we have our tools, our grid tool. In general, this should always be 2-point marching, which allows you to move a particular marcher so they're always 2-step spacing. But if you find the need for yourself to have fine granular control of where they actually move to, you can use that to set yourself in a particular sort of location. Our reference groups allows us to edit a particular reference group. You'll notice that this one has a reference group at a particular number. And finally, paths allow us to show where a particular marcher will go on the next round, or in the next sheet. Ghost sheets allow us to overlay the previous next sheet, so we can see where all of the marchers are going to go. Great, so those are the basic controls over here. Move on to these next and forward ones, pretty straightforward and elementary. Then we have our lassos. Our lassos are very interesting. They allow you to choose a group of dots, or with a polygon, you can choose them via creating a particular shape. And you can always close it off with a double click, and it selects those. Another great selector tool is via the drawing. So I can draw a particular set around, and it allows me to maybe select which ones are in and out, so I can get some very interesting one. As always with all of our selector tools, if you push shift while doing them, you can add more, so that shifting will always continue to add more and more into that group. And then we have the special tool, which is our swap tool. Our swap point tool, when you select it and you pick any 2 points, they will swap their positions with each other. Let me undo that. Let's move on to our shapes. We have a number of shapes and translates that are pretty interesting and complicated. For the most part, you'll find yourself constantly using the translate points, but you may also find the lines and the cross other ones pretty good. Let's collect all of our marchers by doing a Command A. So now if I translate, by holding the shift key, I can move the entire block of marchers by a particular amount. I can also move everything into a line using the translate shape points in a line. By doing that, what I can do is I can get all of the marchers to walk in a particular line. Now this is a little odd because I've selected everybody, but let me go ahead and select a smaller group, and it's a little more obvious on what that tool does. There we go. Some other tools we have our cross, our X and our cross, and those are pretty straightforward. They attempt to form all the marchers into a X or a cross, whatever sort of layout makes sense. When you have a large number of marchers, it's very hard for the tool to figure out what's going on. Finally, we have our circles. We wanted to say move all of the marchers into a particularly large circle, maybe concert ring or something, we could do that. Or if we wanted to, say, draw a particular line, we select it, and then we can move all of the marchers into a particular sort of dramatic shape, like a snake. Finally, we have a little bit some of these other complicated moves. Moves in a line allows it's similar to the first move as a line, but what it can do is it can allow you to move all the dots by a particular amount. So this is maybe not quite so useful, but can be pretty useful when you're trying to collapse all of the points into all the dots into a particular point, like this. There's also a couple of rotates. So rotate here allows you to choose a particular point as a radius and rotate everything amongst, around that rotation point. Might be useful for some more dramatic effects. Then we have shearing. Shearing is more complicated, and it's sort of how you can sort of shear a particular block at an angle. It's like splaying it by a particular point. A little more difficult to use, but you can kind of get the hang of it by choosing a particular point and then shearing at some sort of dramatic angle. The angle always has to be at a right angle to the entry of that X. And reflection allows you to choose a point to reflect everything around. When you choose something outside the block, it looks a little odd. If you choose a point inside the block, you'll note that everything is now funkily rotated around. Resizing allows you to, given one particular boat, resize things to be as if they were sort of magnified upon that point. Let's resize it so it's splayed out this way, so it's nice and tight. Maybe we go the other way to tighten it up. And as I bring it to my convergence point, they all get there. So it's sort of, it's like a magnification around a particular point. And finally, genius move. Genius move, the way to describe it is, you pick 3 points. And what happens is the tool attempts to resize the block so it's like that. But you say this point should have been here, and this point should have been here, and this point should have been here. And you'll note that G8 and A1 are where they should have been, and A5 is going to where it should have been, and everything else is in proportion to it. And finally, what we do is we have our usual way of relabeling our dots via different sort of symbols. And finally, at the very end, ways to change the labels. If you want to toggle the labels to a particular side, or set labels on a particular side, or maybe even just to get rid of the labels or bring them back.